What's going on, everybody? My name is Victor, and obviously this is an MMA channel. I usually make MMA videos on here, but I thought I'd take a little bit of my time today at around 2 something in the morning Eastern time to talk about what it's like working in a factory. I'm 27 years old. I started working on the factory business or industry, however you really want to call it. When I was around 23 years old, I started at a coffee factory in my hometown of Westchester, Pennsylvania, working for a coffee company that was based out of Italy, but they decided to buy a plant over in my hometown. So I worked there, and first experience working in the factory wasn't really that bad. I thought it was pretty. It was stressful because obviously it was the first full time job I really ever had. Obviously I went to college for 4 years. I wasn't really so lucky in getting a job that I actually studied in, or my focus that I actually focused in college. So I ended up having to work in a factory. Obviously, over there, I worked with coffee, I worked with tea, hot chocolate, only for a little tiny bit, but they had mechanics, everybody had their own lines. The company would buy pizza, Chick-fil-A, every once in a while, even hoagies. Um, it was beautiful on the inside, air conditioning, there was heating, there's pretty much everything. So you weren't ever working in the cold, or you weren't working in the heat. You were working in a controlled temperature environment. It was really good. Also, before holidays such as Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter, the company had its own coffee company, had its own cafeteria with their own personal chef and everything like that. Uh, excuse me, that worked there, and they would give out a whole buffet, free food, before any of the major holidays. And if there were any leftovers, you could be able to take some back home to your family, And it was a good environment. Everybody really liked each other and everything like that. A little bit strict when it came to missing work and having to um, come up with some sort of an excuse of why you missed work and everything like that. And if you went on a doctor's visit and didn't come back with a doctor's note, they would terminate you. Obviously, I didn't like that, but other than that, I made a lot of great friends over there. The company did have a lot of mechanics as well, um, mechanics that worked very, very, very well. You'd always work with a partner and everything like that. The only thing that was bad about working with partners is that when they would go on break, you would have to watch their machine while watching your machine at the same time. So you're basically doing work on two different machines. You're packing two different lines. You're doing two different pallets. So obviously, the double the work only for 3 times. Obviously, you got to cover someone for the first, second, and third shift, which is nice. And also, they paid for all 3 breaks, which was really, really nice. And the company did also have a gala, so a gala that they would have towards the end of the year for all the workers and all the hard work that they do. So that's what I really liked about the coffee factory. I only lasted there for about 5 months. I ended up getting laid off as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously, I got laid off and worked for a very long time, about close to maybe like 6 months, and then I ended up moving from Westchester, Reading, Pennsylvania. I ended up getting another job a couple years later in the year 2022, right before 2023. So in November of 2022, I ended up getting a new job at this water plant. This is where the really bad experience of working in a factory comes into play. So it's a water factory. In a they put me in the gallon line, basically picking up bundles of empty gallons, and I just tossed them into the machines that they had. I believe they called it line 5 and line 6, and I tossed these empty bundles, and each bundle had around maybe 40 gallons in there. So I'd pick it up, I toss it in the machine, and the machine would debag it. And that's what the machines were called. They were called debaggers. So I was working with 2 different debaggers, and these machines were pretty old, so they were always busted. They were always giving me problems. Obviously, I would throw the bundles into the debaggers. The machine would debag the machine and send the gallons one by one down the line. Obviously, they would always give me problems, always smash different gallons, and sometimes if these gallons were placed vertically behind one another, then the machine wouldn't go. And obviously, when you'd have a jam up on the line as well, because the gallons are coming through here and then they're going back up through a line, and sometimes it'd get completely jammed up. I'd have to get a ladder, get up there, and take out every single jammed gallon one by one. And mind you, they are empty, so they weigh absolutely nothing. And when there are jams like that, I'd have to just take out gallons one by one, and then redo the line, restart the line all over again. And then, if it was a really bad day, it happened many times. Also, I'm taking out trash because every single time the debagger debags a bundle, the film or the bag that the gallons were in gets put on the floor. So not only am I throwing bundles in there, I'm also picking up trash. I'm filling up the trash, replacing the trash. I'm also filling up trailers, and I'm empty trailers as well with these bundles. So I'm doing basically 4, 5, 6 different things. Just one person. I didn't have a partner with me, so I'm doing work for 2 people, working on 2 lines, me by myself. And mind you, this was a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. This is 12-hour rotating shifts. One week you're working 5 days a week, the other week you're working 2 days a week. But like I said, this was complete opposite of what things were like over at the coffee factory. The coffee factory is absolutely, it was beautiful. They had plenty of mechanics, plenty of people to work there. You had partners over, and now I'm in a situation where I don't have any partners. I just working by myself, and the guy that does help me every once in a while only does it when he does have the chance. So I ended up lasting about a month over there at that water factory, and it just wasn't a really good experience whatsoever because, like I said, I wasn't getting the help I needed. It was night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And whenever I was having trouble and I was really struggling, someone from up the line would come up and just kind of like snoop around and kind of look around and see, and I would have to come up to them and say, yeah, I'm having a problem right now. I'm gonna get it fixed as fast as possible. And they say, yeah, I understand. But at the end of the day, they just wanted to know what's going on because they wanted to. Apparently, I just don't think they wanted to get in trouble or anything like that, and they just coming up to me and kind of adding up that added pressure is a little bit too much sometimes, and that's another thing I don't like at all. Obviously, if I was working in that morning shift, there's obviously a lot more people, and then the manager's a little bit more iffy, And the only time I ever saw my manager during the night shift that I worked over at the water factory is basically 3 times, and that was only when he would come back to get the numbers of gallons that were being made over on the Blue Moon machine. But I wasn't working in the area, just working at the two debagger machines, and really struggling a lot of the times. Some days were really easy, but when the days were hard, they were very hard, and I ended up having to leave because the pressure is way too much for me. And obviously, individuals there were working every day. Some do work every day, 12 hours. And I believe when I did get there, there was an individual that had just come back from having a stroke, and he was out for many months because he had basically lived in the factory working almost every single day, 12 hours. Like I said, he wasn't doing 12-hour rotating shifts. He was just doing 12 hours daily, and that really had a toll on his body. And I did hear another conversation from other workers as well, talking about a certain individual that worked his butt off and ended up having to go to the hospital later on because he had issues with his health. So obviously, hearing all this and taking all that information, I needed to change. I needed to leave, and that's where the story of me being at this bacon factory where I'm at right now takes place. Obviously, from the other experiences that I had in the past, it's hit or miss when it comes to working factories here in the U.S. Obviously, a lot of people that do work in factories are sometimes they're foreign, sometimes they come from different countries, and they don't really know the English language, so they decide to work in a factory because there might be a lot of people just like them that speak the same language, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Portuguese, whether it's Italian, you name it, depending on where you are. I live in Pennsylvania. A lot of people here speak Spanish, so when you do go to these factories, a lot of people do tend to speak Spanish, so you won't really have to rely on the English language, which is what a lot of people like about working in factories to begin with. But at the end of the day, some factories just do things extremely different. Some have 3 shifts, and some factories do pay for all those 3 shifts. Some only pay for, not shifts, but I mean breaks. You have 3 breaks. Some companies pay for all 3 breaks. Some companies just pay for 1 break out of the 3. And then there's some companies, such as where I'm at right now, that only gives you 2 breaks. Obviously, The only two breaks that I have is one 30-minute break and one 15-minute break. Also, working in this baking factory, it's very slippery. It's very dangerous sometimes because you're working with machinery and bacon's on the floor, and there's a lot of grease, which means you can be able to slip, not spill, but slip. There have been a lot of instances in the past while I've been in this factory for about 8 or 9 months now, where people have had gone to the hospital because of just not feeling well because of the change of schedule. And our schedule has changed so many different times from when I've been in this factory for the past 9 months. It's absolutely insane. This week I'm working from 3:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the morning, and now next week I'm going to be working from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. And mind you, this is a company that only has two shifts, first shift and second shift. Third shift is basically sanitation, so that doesn't really count whatsoever. But there's more females than men, more women than men that work in this factory, and a lot of them usually work standing up and basically being in the same position 24/7. So a lot of them do have a lot of pain in their legs and their feet and their back, also in their shoulders as well. A lot of men are in machine operator positions where they have to carry out a lot of bacon and put them into the machine where it's sliced. Obviously, a lot of them have wrist issues, back issues, hip issues, and shoulder issues as well, because those are mostly the parts of their body that they're using the most. In my experience, I'm dealing with some wrist pain, some shoulder pain, also some back pain, and also some foot pain as well from my experience of working here in this factory for about 9 months. It will be 9 months later on this month, but I've been here for a long time. I was going to quit my first day, but I'm still going strong. But I do plan on looking for another employment in the future. But like I said, the cons of working where I'm at right now is that it's a cold environment. They're always changing the schedule. One week you're working 10 hours, another week you're working 9, another week you're working 8, and another week you're barely scraping by to make 40 hours. It's dangerous because of how slippery the surfaces are. The machines tend to really mess up a lot, and you kind of put yourself in peculiar situations and some dangerous situations because of where you're putting your hands, where you're putting your body, everything like that. And I just believe the management doesn't really care about the workers that much either. You always want to work somewhere, and this is the most important part. You always want to work somewhere where you feel that you belong. You always want to work somewhere where you're never having to look at the clock to see how much time it is until break or how much time it is for the shift to be over. You want to be somewhere where you're never really looking at the clock. You want to be somewhere where time is going by really fast. You want to be somewhere where you really love to work, where you feel that you belong, where you have good relationships with all the people that you work along with, and also with a company that gives off a lot of benefits. Obviously, the main reason why a lot of these factories give off benefits is because while you're working in a factory setting and also in the factory and manufacturing industry, your chances of getting hurt on the job they basically skyrocket to 80 to 90%, depending on position that you do, depending on what work you conduct during the shift, whether you're a machine operator, whether you're a packer, whether you're working in the warehouse. It's all dangerous at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, and you always have to watch out. And if you do get in an accident and it is your fault, they will send you back home without pay because you were the one at fault. But if you do get in an accident because of something that was already pre-existing, say obviously some person left from the other shift left the area extremely dirty where you're at, and you end up slipping and falling and you end up injuring yourself, then that's basically the company's fault right there, because the people before you didn't do their job the right way. So obviously that's a way that, if you do end up getting hurt, the company would have to compensate you for that. But if it's your fault, the company won't compensate you at all. And that's where these insurance plans come in for all these different companies. But at the end of the day, with factories, it usually comes up with enrollment periods for health insurance. Obviously, other companies will give you 401k as well, which is really, really key in case you want to retire early in your life. So that's something that's a positive right there. The insurance with the enrollment periods, I don't like it at all, because if you miss it, you're going to have to wait maybe 4 to 5 months until you do get another crack at getting that insurance. If that's the case, you're better off applying somewhere else for insurance, state insurance, Medicaid, you name it. But just working in factories isn't what it's cracked up to be. It's very taxing. You work in different hours depending on where you work, on top of overtime as well. And the majority of the companies that do have overtime is basically you work your 8-hour shift and then you work 4 hours more. So you're basically working 12 hours within a day. And then when you get back home, you're only sleeping for about maybe 5 or 6 hours. And then about 3 hours later, you're already back at it at work once again. When I was working at the coffee factory, I did work multiple overtimes in a week, and that did have a toll on my body. And I did realize that when I did wake up in the morning, I really didn't have that much time to do what I wanted because I worked overtime. Obviously, overtime is good. It increases the pay on the check, but at the end of the day, money isn't everything. Money is never really going to amount to anything. When you die, you're not going to take the money that you have to the grave with you. So you might as well watch your health when it comes to these factories, because your health will deteriorate if you're not working at the right place, if you're working in a job that likes to put stress on you 24/7. Like I said, I work in a turkey factory, and if you're working on the line, the turkey is going to come by extremely fast. So you have to work fast, because the majority of these factories are fast-paced industries, meaning that you're going to have to work as fast as you possibly can, every single minute on the job, on the dot, until you leave for that shift. And some people like that, some people don't, some people quit, some people stay, depending on their situations. Some people have situations where they can't leave the job because that's the only thing that's really putting food on the plate for he or she, for their family. And I just want to let people know that at the end of the day, we live in the United States of America. I know there are people that have papers, that don't have papers, and people that don't have papers, that are undocumented. Sometimes where they work is the only place that can really work out until they can be able to figure their situation out. At the end of the day, you don't want to be tied up in a factory job. If you can find something better, do it as fast as you possibly can, and make sure it's something that you really truly love and that you believe that you will be able to do for the next 20 to 30 years until you retire. If you're somewhere where you dislike where I'm at right now, you're always looking at the clock, the time's going by extremely slow, and it feels like you're doing 50,000 things, and when you look at the clock, you feel like 30 minutes have gone by, but the clock says only 9 minutes have gone by. So that's another negative right there. And if the job that you're working at, like mine, is always changing its schedules, and it's always messing up with your sleep pattern, it's also not good. When I started my job, I weighed about 160 pounds, really close to 160 pounds, and now I weigh about 145 pounds. Obviously, I haven't been eating the right way. My sleep schedule hasn't really been the best, but I do tend to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. But if I do wake up early, I can't really go back to sleep. It's hard, and I kind of blame that on the job. You know, factory jobs will have a toll on your mind, your body, and your overall health. You know, some of these jobs are good, some of these are not, but these are all fast-paced environments here in the United States of America, and a lot of people that come from different countries that work in factories will tell people that, you know, the American dream isn't what it's cut out to be. You're going to have to work extremely hard for what you want and what you believe in, and if you're going the factory route, you're going to have to work hard almost every single day. Sometimes you're going to get help, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're going to be working the same position, sometimes you're not, you know. I've worked so many different positions in the job that I'm at right now. One day I might be packing, one day I might be working over in the room where I'm hanging basically pork bellies onto bacon rack cars. That way the rest of the process can be able to be done. And if I'm not packing, and if I'm not hanging, then I might be thrown out the trash. So many different positions, so many people getting moved around, because in a lot of these factories, there's not that much stability. People are coming and they're going almost every single week. And when people come and go, you have to pick up the slack, and people get moved around. You get moved around to different rooms, you get moved around in different positions, and that's another thing that people don't like. They want to be in the same position that they like to be in. And if they get moved and be sent somewhere else, then they end up quitting, they end up leaving, and then it ends up leaving a void at the end of the day, and that's just not a good thing. And it happened at the coffee job that I was at. They had a little bit of a turnover rate, but it wasn't that high. It was pretty low. At the water factory that I worked at, their turnover rate was extremely high. My only had about, when I got there, the coffee place, when it comes to training altogether, over at the coffee factory, I had about 3 months of training, which was absolutely amazing. I learned a lot out of it at the end of the day, and became a great worker as a result of it. The water factory only had 3 days of training, only 3 days of training, and then they fed me to the wolves. They sent me to the lion's den, and I was the gazelle in the cage in the lion's den, around a lot of lions. That's basically how I felt at the end of the day. We had 3 days of training. They switched me to another shift. I got the training on first shift, and then I ended up going to the night shift because that's where I wanted to work. And then things just didn't end up the way that they were supposed to, And with this job that I have right now, for the packing position, because I also work as a QC, with the packing position, they didn't give me training at all on the first day. They just threw me to the wolves, and I just started learning on the dot, and I almost quit on the first day because of the pressure that was really consuming me. So that kind of entails pretty much everything about a factory. The pros is that the health benefits are pretty good. The 401k is good. The pay time off is pretty good as well, depending on the factory that you work in. You might be a full-time employee and a permanent one after 2 months. You might be a permanent one after 1 year. You might be a permanent employee after 6 months or half a year. So it's different depending on the factory that you work in. But those are some cons right there. Like I said, the health insurance, the 401k, the overtime, depending on the type of individual that you are. The shifts, depending on which one you want. Obviously, first shift is always taken, which is a bummer. Second shift is that in-betweener that no one really likes that much. And then you have third shift, where if you work a good third shift job, you have a good chunk of the day for yourself. So the cons is that it's pretty much dangerous. The schedules are most likely going to change every once in a while, depending on where you are. You might get moved around a lot. You might not get the help that you need depending on where you're at, and you don't even get listened to half the time. If you share an issue with the manager really isn't going to say anything at the end of the day, because the managers are always looking out for themselves. They're not really looking out for the workers, because if a worker leaves, they just plug another one in. If another worker leaves, they plug another new person in, and then those new people leave, and then they end up doing the same thing. It's a whole entire process at the end of the day, and the injuries that come around and the pain that comes along with working in the factory. Those are some of the biggest cons as well. Working in the factory is not what it's cut out to be. I don't think it's always going to be a good industry to work in. There are rewards and benefits if you do work hard and you do work up the ladder, up the food chain, and kind of increase your ranks. But if you're working a job where all those high-ranking positions, whether you're talking about a line leader, a supervisor, a manager, now if those are already taken, some people aren't going to let off that spot for a very, very, very long time. So it's going to take you a very long time to be able to get to those positions, and a very long time of hard working and longevity. So appreciate you guys for watching this video. I'm sorry it's so long. It says 24 minutes right now, but I just wanted to share my opinion. I'm not the smartest guy out there, not the dumbest guy out there as well. I'd consider myself an in-betweener, but I thought I'd give out a little bit of my 2 cents to each and every single one of you that's been working in the factory ever since you got out of high school, ever since you got into any type of school whatsoever, and also for the immigrants that have come to this country seeking work in the U.S. and their first jobs in this country have been in a factory, and they basically figuring out, and it's not really cut out, it's as what it is. as long as you work for something that you believe in, I believe that will give you enough motivation in order to do a good job. But I advise you guys to find a job that you truly love, that you really love going to, that you can't wait to get there when you pull into that parking lot, because that is what really changes your life. That is what really changes your life in work and how to work and everything else in between. You know, if you're working at a job you don't like, you're going to be negative the majority of the time. If you're working at a job that you truly like, it's going to be positive the majority of the time. So, like I said, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Hopefully it was helpful for anyone out there that works in the factory. I'm looking to get out of the industry any chance I get. Like I said, I went to college, but going to college and working in the factory doesn't mean anything. I'm not better than anyone. I'm not smarter than anyone. I'm not more accomplished than anyone. We're all equals at the end of the day, and that's how I like to treat people, no matter where I go. So, appreciate you guys, and yeah, later.